Good morning, happy people. My name is Nate Manahan. I am live in Indianapolis, Indiana, and you are watching The High Five. Today, we're going to talk about how can you engage your employees, your staff, your team to keep them motivated, keep them on your team to long term. We're going to talk about, let's see. When you're in the sales process, you get to that close, they say yes, but your job is not done. Absolutely not. There's more to do. We're going to talk about it. All this and more on The High Five. Let's get going.
The time has come, the questions are set, opinions hide, discussions are led, a show about nothing and everything, it's all the same. We've got sports, entertainment, sales, and marketing. It's time for the high five. We've got it all covered. It's time for the high five. We've got it all covered, yeah. The high five.
The High Five, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am not alone. That is the beautiful thing here, because joining me on the High Five, and I got to make sure that their volume is up, on the left-hand side of our screen, this is a man who I know is personally holding up the economy of Warsaw, Indiana. He's going to every restaurant and buying food. He's going to every retail organization and buying clothes. He even somehow recently bought a whole set of dogs. I don't know what was thinking. Mr. Brian Linke, how are you, Brian? I make these up as I go.
Yeah, dogs definitely. Clothes, food, Nate, yes. Dogs, absolutely, that's a no. But I can tell you what, that introduction, that was smooth. That was your best one yet. That was definitely your best one yet.
Well, we don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right,
That was
now,
good.
on the right-hand side of the screen, he is the man who takes care of everything at PayProTec and makes sure everything runs smooth. He keeps people happy. Plus, he golfs nearly a perfect game, has an incredible son, another child on the way, and he lives in the land of elk. And we have a story to tell, my deer story. I don't have elk, but I have deer. Mr. Danny Shard. How are you, Danny?
Good morning, Nate. I agree. I mean, you're feeling it. That was a great intro, but in no way, shape, or form can I say I take care of all things at PayProTec. You got Billy West, Jen Sales, Jay Sleep.
Oh, y'all know he's starting to name names, so we're in trouble now. You're going to miss
Team
one.
is amazing, and I do get some credit for it. So I'm just lucky to be on a good team. Happy Tuesday, everybody.
It is.
You didn't mention my name.
I know.
Oh, and Brian Linke.
Jeez, man.
Oh, I love this when we're going live and I'm watching out and I'm getting the Zoom warning saying the internet connection is unstable. Come on, Comcast, get your rear end together. So
Let's go.
last night I was in a
Great story.
so I'm out for a walk. It's just before 7 o'clock my time. Danny will often call me about that time. I have the Bluetooth in. I'm walking. I'm getting my sweat on, trying to keep my heart rate up to 110. Just getting going. I'm going up a big hill in the neighborhood here, and I'm talking to Danny. I think I was listening at the time, and this deer just comes out of the woods right next to me, and like it had to be like. It felt like it was 2 feet from me. It was probably 10 feet. But I'm looking eye to eye as this deer runs out. It stops, stares at me, and then starts to go back to the woods and then decides, nope, it's going to continue crossing the street. And I was like, I could have reached out and touched this thing. And I don't remember what I said, but I was shocked and scared because I wasn't focusing at all on my walk. I was talking to Danny, and I was like, what in the world's going on? And I don't know what I said to Danny. I know I had people that were walking in the neighborhood, socially distanced, probably 20 feet behind me, and they were like shocked. And I think I scared them more than the deer did, because that deer just like jumped right out on me. That was my role last night. Danny,
It was a little bit of I won't call it a shriek or a shrill, but it was definitely some shock I could hear through the phone, and I'm like, what happened? And a deer almost ran into me like 5 feet in front of me. I'm like, holy cow, we got a story for the High Five.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, how can I not be faster on my camera phone? If I could just get a video of, like, I've got to go all to the neighbor, because the one side is woods in that area, that street, and the other side, one of them's got to have a video out there of me looking like a fool, scared to death of this deer staring me down. All right.
Well, and I'll say this really quick on this subject. My neighbor sent me a video of a mama bear and two cubs in their driveway yesterday at like 4 o'clock in the morning. I shot it over to Jen and Brian to see it, and Jen came back and said something along the lines of, with people being indoors, animals are out more. And I thought that was funny, but probably true. And then Nate almost gets attacked by a deer. So it's definitely true. Animals are out more, but get outside if you can, but watch out for the animals.
Watch out for them. I'm telling you something right now. You know what the big problem is? The rats.
I've heard, like, I mean, this, like in California, they are having animal problems because suddenly the roads aren't as full, the air is fresh, everybody's feeling great because, hey, my word, there's not pollution. And I've seen, the mountain lions are coming down from the mountains. Apparently the bears are now, you guys always had bears around, but now they're just coming right in the backyard. And we've even had, I know that in southern Indiana, where there haven't been bears prevalent, just, occasional sightings that cross over, there have been multiple sightings of bears in areas that are not usually, haven't been inhabited after we, took their territory 150 years ago. So it's, hey.
Yeah. Well, in New York, they're saying that there's so much garbage because people are inside. There's a lot more garbage. So garbage brings rats, a lot of rats.
There's so many jokes I could make on that. I'm not going to make
We're not
them.
in New York anymore, though, are we, Brian?
No, we're not in New York.
There's so many places I'd like to be, but let's get to our first thing. I was thinking
we go back though.
I was listening to I think it was Bill Simmons yesterday, and this popped up on my mind, and he was talking about how he would love to see a whole documentary on Phil Jackson, because you can kind of piece it. Phil's written a couple books. He's told a few stories. In those book tours, he's told quite a few things. But Phil Jackson, here's a man who has 11 rings. He coached Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Kobe, and Shaq. He's dealt with more mentalities, and he really came out shining in this series. And he's always called the Zen master. He has this unique way, and it even ended with his unique way of how everybody had to tell why this was important to them and put it into the fire, and people were crying and sentimental. And you just can imagine, like, Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan writes a poem. I think it was, or who wrote? Was it Michael or Dennis wrote the poem? No, it
was Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan wrote the poem. I mean, it was just a fascinating story. But let's first start with basketball, and then I want to talk about the impact of how his leadership skills moved to business. But what's the impact of Phil Jackson on coaching and on basketball?
Well, let me just say the first thing with Phil Jackson, not to take anything away from what he's done, because 11 rings it'll never be done again. Especially in my lifetime, it won't be. But the one thing is okay, you can't win with bad players, right? So in order for any coach to coach anything, Don Shula, who just passed away, coach of Miami Dolphins in 72, the only team to ever go undefeated. He came right out. He's like, you know what? Yeah, we won every single game because I have the best players. So you can't win with bad players. But I think what Phil Jackson did is he just was able to have this innate ability to communicate with his players and be a friend, but know where that fine line was where then you can be a coach. Like, on the Last Dance when Rodman left and went to Vegas for who knew how long. And I mean, I'm not saying that is a normal thing, but I just think that he had just a way of dealing and talking to his players to where, again, there was a fine line between friendship and coach, and he was able to find that balance. And, that combined with great players, that's a winning combination.
So, Danny, when looking at that, I mean, Brian's totally right. The great players have to be there, but there have been so many coaches over the history of time that have not gotten the most out of the great players. And you could even say, Phil was taking over for Doug Collins, maybe, and some of that's timing. But there have been multiple coaches whether it's NBA or others, that don't get the most out of those players. What for you, Danny, is what sets Phil apart than maybe other coaches that haven't been able to get the most out of those elite players like the MJs and the Scotties and the Kobe's and Shaqs?
Yeah, and I mean that's really where my mind was going when Brian was saying that. I mean, there's a lot of phenomenal players that haven't really reached their true potential with their team or the organization that they're with for a variety of reasons, and that's what was unique with Phil. Obviously, getting to coach Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and that crew, and then migrating to the Lakers, right? Wasn't he the coach with Kobe and Shaq and them? Yeah. Following that. Yes. So, quite the move over. But I think it speaks volumes of who he is. You're right, Brian. You got to have great players, but I know that the Lions weren't winning whenever you started coaching them, and you and Jen got them up to being a winning team. So a lot of it has to do with coaching, getting the best out of your players, and Phil does that, and Brian Linke does that too.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that little plug there.
You're welcome. I'm telling you, it's more about the coaching and how you interact, like you're saying, right? Being a player's coach. One of my favorite coaches of all time, still coaching today, is Mike Tomlin. I think he's probably one of the best players coaches out there, as far as being able to relate to his players and getting the best out of them. And Phil was one of the best at that.
Well, the thing is if you think about it, the days of Bo Schembechler, and I'm talking to Nate here, and Woody Hayes, and that kind of coaching where you're screaming and yelling at players, and the thing is kids today are just different, right? Not better, not worse. They're just different, I think. And if you're going to do that to 5-star players coming out of high school, they're not coming to Michigan. They're not coming to Ohio State. Right, they're going somewhere else. So, same thing with there was a guy by the name of Frank Kush. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he was at Arizona State. He was the guy who was grabbing face masks all the time and hitting his players with whistles. And you do that. Well, you do that today, you're in jail. But back then he was able to relate to his players that way. Today, nobody's coming to Arizona State if you're grabbing their face mask. I can tell you that.
Well, back then that approach was more like fear, right?
Well,
I mean, It was, just instilling fear in your players and making them work hard because they didn't want to get their butts kicked,
right,
or get called out in front of the team and get embarrassed. I mean, that approach of coaching worked for a long time. Now, you'll be sued or get thrown in jail for something.
You're not getting the best. Okay, here's the thing: you coach like that, you're not getting the best players.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Well, and it's about the thing that I think Phil was one of the first, and certainly in the NBA. Certainly San Antonio, and I just lost his name. Greg, who's San Antonio's coach?
Popovich.
Greg Popovich. Poppy, sorry, brain fart. There have been people that have gotten the best out of the players, and they are not those who are able to deal with as much personality are not the most flamboyant. I mean, Phil would yell. That was the interesting thing. You don't see Phil yell often, but he would get in people's faces. Even he would be what he did with Dennis at the end in the game. But he would choose how he treated each player. Each person was unique, and he was trying to figure out, how do I get the best out of this unique flower, as for a lack of better metaphor, and I'm going to make sure that each one is unique. I treat them the way they need to be treated, and I figure out a way to motivate them. And you don't see that, the Bo Schembechlers, I think we're seeing a change. I think, even like in the Nick Sabans, he was kind of that way, but he also is kind of, you come to my program, you get treated all the same. And I think as basketball is one of those places in smaller teams where it's easier to motivate by treating each person uniquely versus treating the big team. Because when you have 110 people on your team, a college football team, you don't have the context. So you have to bring a staff to do that. Phil had a great team, but he only had 3 or 4 staff and was able to motivate and get the most out of each person that was on his bench and try to make sure they understood what part they are and then convince them to actually be part of that team. Like, he had to convince Michael Jordan to score a few less points when he moved into the triangle offense, because he knew in order for them to win, Michael needed to go from 36, 37 points down to 31, 32. Michael still won, 14 or I don't know, what's the number? No, 10, I think it's 10 scoring championships, and is the only one he won in all 6 of his world championship years. He was the scoring champion. He was also he was still the elite of the elite, but he had to come down. He could have scored more points and lost more games, and you have to figure out how to convince that. Let's take this over to the business world, guys. And a team, when you're leading, what can we learn from Phil about how we motivate and customize our motivation to each individual person and not treat everyone the same way?
Well, you said that's the point. I just don't think that just not just in business, but in life, you just, we've talked about this before, where you just, no one is treated the same. Right now, you've got 4 children. I've got 3 now. It's hard for me to believe I have 3, but I have 3, and I don't treat any of them the same, and neither do you. I mean, I can't speak for you, but I can only imagine. I just think, again, just like in the business world. You just have to find that niche and that balance, and those are tough things to do. That's why sales is hard, right? Nobody ever said selling was easy. That's one thing I think that gets overlooked is like, okay, yeah, I'll just go sell something. Okay, good luck, because it's a difficult thing, because again, you're reading people, in today's day, with the internet and everything, people, they just know so much more than they did 30 years ago. Right. So, and that can work in your, for you, and it can work against you. Again, I just think that it's just a matter of getting to know people, reading the room. We've talked about that before, and just finding the balance.
I can't say it better than that.
Well, that finding that balance, and then we grow as people. Don't expect yourself as a leader to not continue growing. You're going to continue learning. There are things that I know I need to work in my leadership right now, and there are things I need to find time for, and there are ways to do it. And I am confident if we could get that whole story, and I've read one of Phil's books, not both of them, but if we get the whole story, that picture of Phil Jackson, he changed as a leader as how he was in 91 versus how he was a leader of that team in 97, 98, and the storyline that we really heard the story of. And they learn how to adapt and change. And that's, I just think it's fascinating to watch, because the things that are coming out, it's the microcosm of the business world on that floor, because there are Michael Jordans in your company and organization. There are also Steve Kerrs, there's Scottie Pippens, and you've got to get the most out of them. They're different personalities, they have different roles, they have different things that they're going to fulfill, and at the end of the day, we're all going for that championship trophy. And we have to figure out, how do I get the most out of this team? Because the team, thank you, Bo Schembechler. All right, we're going to move on to number 2. I have a question here, gentlemen. Finland this last week has opened up their movie theaters. They're the first in the world mostly to do that. Korea has opened a couple, but mostly it's like very small, 10% in population. Finland opened their movie theaters up at 50%, so you're really within 3 to 4 feet. They sold out every movie theater. Now, what I couldn't find on the stories that I was reading, how many movie theaters does Finland have? I have not been to Finland. I'm sure it's a wonderful place, but I just don't picture it as the robust technological place that I think of. But maybe, I think there are more moose than people. But I wonder, will you go back to the movie theater? What does this look like? And as we look like, I think there's some opportunities here, because I'm going to, Charlie DeWitt, I was following him on Facebook this last weekend. He has one of our partners, but also is an owner of a restaurant and bar, and they were doing a drive-in movie that they invited all their customers to. And I've seen other people. Perfect, genius, get people in. But I'm like, the way that we do, I don't even know if it's just Corona. I wonder how movie theaters are going to come back, because we have other experiences. We've learned that we can enjoy being home, and we can figure out how to put a projector in the parking lot of Jim Dandy's and watch a movie. Will we go back to movies, or has this permanently forever changed how many people go to movies? I don't think it's ever going to go away, but has this totally changed at all?
I don't think it's changed. That I'm going to jump in here, Bri.
Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's been a few years since I've been to a movie theater. My wife and I were actually talking about this a couple weeks ago. Since we had our little guy, we have not been to a movie, and I used to love going to the movies, especially the ones where you could get a beer and a glass of wine and go into the movie. I was always the guy that finished my beer before the previews ended and had to go out and get another beer. But that was a great thing whenever they added that. And it was always fun. I remember as a kid going to the movies, and there was nothing like walking into that big theater, and you got that monstrous screen, and you got all the chairs and all the people. It was exciting. I don't think that's going to go away. For me, it's going to be years before I go into another movie theater, but that's not because of COVID. We're having another little one, so I just don't see us unless we decide to do that on a date night. But it's just been a while since we've gone to the movie theater. But I think really just in regards to the COVID-19 and opening movie theaters, I wouldn't want to go. If I could, I probably wouldn't go sit in a movie theater with a bunch of people right now. So I think it's going to be quite a while, but I don't think they're going to go away. I think, especially kids are gonna love going to the theaters and seeing those big screens like I did. So they'll be back.
Do you ever go to the movie theater by yourself?
I have not.
Ever? Never?
Never.
Nate?
I did it I have this one period. I had a Thanksgiving several years ago where no family was around. And we were getting ready to travel. And so my kids I had the next day, and we were going to go down to Georgia. I think, no, we were going to go to down to the Grand Ole Opry or Opry Land or whatever, that big hotel. And I was by myself for a Thanksgiving, and I was staying in a hotel right across from an independent movie theater. And that theater was showing movies, and I went and watched 3 movies. It's the only time I've ever done it by myself. I went and watched 3 movies. It was the most relaxing. I enjoyed it. It had great food, and that was a lot of fun. But that's the only time I've done it. How about you, Brian?
I've done it. I've done it more than this many times. Okay. Matter of fact, okay, and don't hold this against me, but I went to the movies by myself one year on Christmas Eve. Okay, and when I walked into the theater and I went to pay, I kept on thinking to myself, okay, does this guy think I'm just the biggest loser of all time? But then I got past it and went in.
Absolutely.
Rocky 3 by myself on Christmas Eve, because all my family was coming in the next morning.
Yep. And
I had nothing to do. And my wife, she wasn't, well, we weren't married at the time, but she was actually coming in as well. But so I went to the movies by myself on Christmas Eve.
I love it. I mean, I think, but the movie experience is different. There are going to be a group of people, but I think what this is fast forwarded, the demise is already happening, because I know, like, my kids enjoy going to the movies only because that was the only place that they could go see and be able to see the Star Wars or the big Marvel movies. We always go to the, first night if we can, a lot of times, and I let them stay up late, or they go with their friends, or we do that as that's an experience. But the experience is not the theater for them. The experience is that they get to be part of that first movement that sees The Dark Knight or whatever movie they're going to watch. They did not see The Dark Knight. I don't know why that one came to my mind. My kids aren't that old for seeing that one as the opening night. I think that there's going to be a lot of change. And I think it's just like these things in society, you have to read the tea leaves. This was happening before. AMC needed to be making a change 2 years ago about how they made their money, because they've already were losing money. Now that's going to become a disaster. They're having to be bailed out. They're probably going to be bought up by maybe things like Amazon, people who can think about different ways and different experiences of how to do it. And it really surprised me how much Finland sold out, because I don't think you open movie theaters here today, they would sell, at 50% capacity or 25% capacity, they would sell out. I just don't think that would happen.
I go.
Brian Linky's going, and which I think there are people that will do it. So I think that absolutely is true.
Hey, did you ever go to a movie with your wife and she goes to one, you go to the other one?
No, I would still think that would be me going to the movies by myself.
No, that's not the same thing. But
no, the answer is no. I've never done that.
I've done that once. We've done it one time.
That is awesome. All right.
We have, though, gone to a movie and after ours got over, another one was starting and we just walked into the other one. I've done that before.
Okay. That's stealing.
I know. Then I got guilty and then actually went and paid for the ticket.
Secret confessions with Danny Shard. There we go. All right, moving on to number 3, gentlemen. So, 1, let me give a highlight. So, I was reading this article, and I'm going to give a shout out for Apple Plus News. If you wanted to spend $10 a month and get access to almost 200 magazines, no, it's not the paper fuel, but I get to read all these magazines. I do it every day. I read a little bit from these things in the New Yorker and Entrepreneur. I read People. I read things, all these food and architectural digests that I would never read, and I get it all for $10 a month, and it's instantly on my phone. Let me highly recommend it.
We have sponsors here?
Well,
is that what's going on right now?
That's it. It's a little sponsor going on. I'm hoping Apple gives me a little kicky kick here.
I see my friends at Barstool Sports. This is how they do it. They roll out their advertising. They're like, shout out to Flamin' Hot Cheetos and shout out to Crest toothpaste. And here we go. Shout out to Apple News. I like it.
All right. So
Ready for a
Nate Manahan is a plethora of knowledge.
Okay.
I like the
My
word plethora.
goodness.
I appreciate the word plethora. All right, back to this. So Entrepreneur Magazine, the most current edition, had an article in about keep the team together. And as I was looking at this article, other than how cool is the Rock, and that was an interesting article about he is ultimately a great entrepreneur, great article. But they had 3 points, and I'm going to pull them up on my phone here, on the 3 main points of how you keep your team together. Because their point is when unemployment is at its biggest, which is the biggest ever, and that means there is going to be a glut. I think this is going to open up. We saw a great day. We heard that there may be a virus, a vaccine coming yesterday, and the stock market shoots up 1,000 points, and we all jump in joy. Hey, let's keep our expectations low. But what we also know is when this all happens, there are going to be a lot of open positions and a lot of competition for those open positions. And what happens is sometimes there's too much inventory. And I think there's going to be over inventory of jobs when things start opening up. I think it'll probably be 6 months to a year out, and we're going to have to keep our team in. And how do we keep the team that we've built right now that's on our team, it's working, how do we keep them from going and working for someone else when suddenly someone else says, hey, I'll offer you more or whatever? And so they had 3 points, and I'm interested in what these gentlemen, so they have not seen these yet. Number one, they say that these are the 3 key things to making sure that your team stays together. Number one, they say, it's always compensation and personalized bonuses. Number 2, upward potential. Number 3, respect. Those are the 3 keys to keeping your team together. Guys, what do you think about it? Are there other ideas? Do you agree, disagree? Let's go. Danny Shard, what do you think?
I would agree. I don't think I would put that in the order though. I can't remember whenever I had this conversation, but it was years ago, and it might have been at my old at my job prior to PayProTec. Those 3. But the thing is that you got to like where you work, right? So the camaraderie, you got to like the job for the most part, anyway. Of course, it's work. They wouldn't call it work if it was fun. We all try to make the most fun out of it, but. I think the camaraderie with the people you work with, as far as your coworkers, your customers, that's of huge importance, I think, in making sure people are happy, right? The compensation, I think it's tough to ignore, right? People don't want to admit that, but that's the reality. And I don't like saying that that's number one, but what do you think, Brian? I think it has to be. I mean, money above anything else, I think is, people won't admit, but I think that's the harsh reality. But, the camaraderie and who you work with and how you're treated from your leaders and your peers are the top things that's going to keep employees where they're at.
Well, right. And well, let me start by saying, sometimes there are employees that you don't want to retain, right? Let's be clear. Okay. Right. I mean, I'm not saying, I don't think, at PayProTec, I don't think there's anybody really. I don't think there's anybody, but going back to the money thing, when you break it down, okay, nobody's going to work for free, right? I mean, nobody's coming into the office every day, sitting down, getting on the phone, going out on the street, selling door to door, whatever you're doing, you're not doing it for free. Right. So
Right.
Let's call a spade, right? So yeah, I think the compensation thing, obviously, but I think you almost have to rule that part out. I don't even think that should be in the conversation, because I just think that's a gimmick. But I you know what? And like Danny said, you have to like what you do. You have to like coming to work every single day. You don't have to love it. If I could throw a fastball 99 miles an hour, I'd probably be doing something else. But I can throw it 39 miles an hour, so I can't. So I'm not playing for the Cubs. But I think one of the things, and again, I think those are great points. But I think one of the things, and here at PayProTec, I think it's glaring. In that we have to me, we have an open door policy when it comes to things. And I don't necessarily mean, Matt Hoskins' door is open, right? Which it is. I mean, I think anybody at any given time would be comfortable calling, the founder of our company on the telephone or texting him or emailing him and said, hey, you know what? I really need to talk to you. He would definitely call you. no matter who it is in here, right? No matter what employee it is, except maybe me. No, I'm kidding. But I just think going to work where you can like with Danny, he's the director of sales. I'm comfortable with Danny Sharp, like coming to him with anything. Okay, it doesn't have to be PayProTec related. It doesn't, it could be anything, a personal, whatever it is. Okay, and I just think that is a great formula to keep people, to have an open door policy, respect people, like you said, Nick. I think that was the third thing. But where people are comfortable talking to one another, no matter who it is.
I agree. Thank you, Bri.
I think that was great, Brian. And I think,
although I questioned the 39 mile an hour fastball, I got to see this. I don't know.
Actually, I got a little thing going.
Nate, what do you think? Do you think he can throw at 39?
Oh man. Let's just say I have my doubts, but
this will be on a future high five of Linky attempting a fastball.
I know. I'm trying to judge
under.
that. I threw a ball last year to a radar gun nearly as hard as I could I didn't want to throw my shoulder out, and I was like at 68, like pretty hard. And it always just reminds me how fast a ball is. And so I'm trying to figure out, is Linky half of me or only a quarter of me? That's what I'm really trying to figure out.
Let me tell you something. If you're throwing 68, I'm throwing at 39. I can tell you that.
I did that I don't know, it's probably about 10 years ago. The Astros came to Denver to play the Rockies for like a 3 or 4 game stint, and I went to all the games. And they have in the mezzanine, they've got the throw the ball and the thing, and there's a kid there, and he must have been 16, 17 years old, still in high school, and he threw at 83 miles an hour. I'll never forget this. And and I was 25 years old. I'm like, okay, this is no problem. I threw it. I threw my arm out. I threw it as hard as I could, 71. I couldn't throw it any faster than that. I mean, I'm going to go with the under. I'm sorry, Bri, but 39 I think is a tough accomplishment. I don't think you can do it.
Here's the thing. I think if I actually attempt that, I think I'm getting divorced.
Yeah. And a shoulder replacement, which make it a really long week or month or even year.
That would be a bad story to tell.
We need you at PayProTec. I can't afford you trying to throw a 39 mile an hour fastball.
Right. My shoulder hurts just even thinking about it.
He's in aching right now. He's been the Aleve and ibuprofen are shooting underneath the table right now.
I gotta go get something.
All right, so back to our finishing up this conversation. I just think we have to think through. My take on compensation is these three have to all be blended together, because sometimes people will take less money in order to have more happiness, and that is absolutely true, and definitely more true than it's ever been, because compensation now is more known. Because heck, I can pull up exactly what someone makes in New York City or Indianapolis or San Diego. I can figure out where people are slotted. We're more open. There's more equity. It's not 100% where it needs to be. It's not, there's still a glass ceiling that needs to be broken at times, as three men talk on this thing. But there are more and more times where people just know and make a choice to take a little less compensation in order to have more respect or more upward mobility, as people are trying to figure out, okay, next time this thing happens, especially those, so the whatever it is, 34 million people that are underemployed or unemployed right now in the US, they're out there looking for jobs and making decisions. And as they make those decisions, I think if the compensations are equal or within plus or minus 10%, or depending on what ranges you're working in, then respect, I think, and feeling good about yourself and feeling like you're, enjoying your day a little bit more is the number one thing. And then it just depends on personality, where upward mobility is important, because those are different for certain people. Because some people are just like that. Everybody's personality is different. For me, I have dreams and ideas and passions, and not that everybody doesn't, but I'm very focused on what I want to do with my career and trying to figure it out. But there are others that aren't that way. So, gentlemen, last comments on this before we move on to our last two topics of the day.
No, I think we nailed it.
Perfect. All right. I like it when we hear we nailed it. All right. Number 4, the PayProTec reopen guide. This is just a quick one, but I was thinking about this because all these things come about because I'm putting some content together, and I've been working with some of our merchants and learning from them and what they're doing as they reopen. And what's happening is a lot of these places that are going to have a little bit more footwork, it's going to be different as they open up, but they're opening the restaurant, they're opening the retail, but it becomes extremely important to how they clean and how often they clean and when they clean and whether they do it themselves or whether they hire a third party. And I was just thinking, what do you guys, as you're hearing this, and maybe you're thinking for the first time, what are some of the things that you would want and expect of the retail or restaurants that you're going to go into, how thoroughly they clean everything?
Right.
I mean, I can start with PayProTec real quick, and before I go into the restaurant thing, and I know that our offices have never been any, this is my second day back in a month and a half, but our offices have never been any cleaner than they are now, and I just found that our cleaning lady used to come once a week, and now we've got her coming 3 times a week. We also have Jerry Hoskins following me around with a spritzer bottle. Cleaning, and I just think everybody's just has a, it's just in the back of your mind now, where I don't think it ever was before. I don't think anybody wanted to be a slob, but I just think that now with this, with the COVID thing and the pandemic, I think people just have that. And when you're going to restaurants, and I mean, I just think you're going to start seeing. And I haven't, since they reopened yesterday, we haven't been to a sit down restaurant, but I can only expect the same. Right. I mean, with everybody with this in the back of their minds, I just think that there's a newfound way of making sure that everything is clean. And when you walk into a place, I think it's going to be glaring just how clean everything is.
I totally agree. And one of the things I think about that is the importance of professional cleaning. There are sometimes stay in your lane, do what you do well, and let professional cleaners do it well. And even at PayProTec, in an office setting that we're still social distancing or attempting to, who knows if Brian follows the rules. We all know that might be true. We'll figure that out later. But having a professional come in 3 times a week. But if you're a high traffic retail and or restaurant hospitality place, no matter even if you're cut, I think you have to consider always having daily professional cleanings, because at the end of the day, 1, it takes liability away from you, and 2, you don't have to learn everything. You'll be able to be wiping your surfaces more than often, wiping your terminals. Anything anybody touches should be wiped constantly, and giving the opportunity. I was at helping a friend out at his condo this week. He lives in a high-rise down in Indianapolis, and it was interesting. The high-rise condo association had they had wipes at every elevator. So you were supposed to grab the wipe. That's how you hit the button. You're basically self-wiping as you were doing it. You weren't supposed to be touching anything, thinking through those things, making sure they're clean. But I think professional is very important. Danny, what do you think? Do you agree or disagree?
I agree. No, totally. And I think, like Brian said, I mean, you're gonna know it. We just moved into a new office, in the middle of all this. It was just perfect timing, as you all can imagine. And so I've been in here by myself, and our building manager has actually provided cleaning services twice a week at no cost to the tenants. A lot of people in our building weren't in the offices, but those of us that were, we just put a little note on our door, and they provided cleaning services for us. So they've been able to help keep our offices really clean. And I've been doing my part just in my area, but now, our team members are starting to come in here too. And so everyone's gonna be on top of it. And that's just here, right? I think, kind of like what Brian and you were saying is, even as we get out into retail and restaurant merchants, you're going to see employees and owners and everybody that's involved in the business proactively being a lot cleaner, right? And cleaning services and, double checking this and that, and making sure that their environment is safe. And I think that's the most important thing for consumers to see. I know it's important for me. And we've talked about this, all 3 of us, before, about, we want to make sure that when we go into somewhere that it's clean and that we're protected and we feel safe. And a lot of consumers are looking at that stuff, right? Matt Hoskins is a big proponent for the PPE and the sneeze shields and taking it to that level. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of merchants are doing that just to show that they're taking that extra precaution, providing professional cleaning services and taking those extra steps to make sure that their environment is safe for their customers.
I think, these are just different worlds now, and you're going to be some extra. I didn't know that the building, our PayProTec office there in Colorado, was getting free cleaning or cleaning supplies and extra help, because that's the kind of stuff you just have to go above and beyond. And there's going to be some extra costs. So as you reopen, you're going to have to think through, okay, how am I going to take that extra cost of the extra supplies I need to buy, of the extra cost? So it changes our budgets. It changes how we do it. It's just all a new world. But the fact is, if you aren't cleaning, it's going to be set apart. And there's a liability thing there. And I've been seeing some of the letters that are coming from insurance companies and trying to figure it out. And hey, even as you're opening, some of the restaurants haven't opened because their insurance company said, hey, we won't insure you for liability if you open, things like that. The big thing is, even when you start waiving liability, and even you just got to think, I've got to do everything I possibly think of and pass that liability off sometimes to the cleanliness, because the professionals, when it's not you cleaning and you're hiring someone to come in every evening to clean, and being shut down for less time. Think about how the grocery stores have handled this right now and how the big box stores have handled it. They lessen the amount of time so they have more time to clean. In fact, they have some of the places have gone more cleaning hours than open hours in order to make this work, because of how long it takes to wipe down all the surfaces, make sure everything is disinfected in this new world. So it's just a thought, some things will go on. We're going to move on to number 5 as we go in and finish up the selling with integrity. It's not finishing up this line. We have 2 more things that I've lined up for selling with integrity, and we're going to put all these together as one video eventually here. But today we're going to talk about closing the close with expectations specifically. What is the next steps? Because when you get to the close, and we're going to start with the yes close. They said yes, we'll do business. You've got to. What do you do? Because you're not done yet. I think way too many salespeople and people that are out in our industry and many industries, because I see this, I experience it. They're out there and they get to the close and they think their job is done. They signed on the dotted line. I turned in the contract. I don't even have to do any of the other parts, or hey, I'm not in charge of the implementation or the onboarding or whatever else, whatever you're selling. What is the most important when you get to that close and you don't fight with yes, because we all know Brian Linkey, don't question yes, but you have some work to do.
Don't argue with yes.
Don't argue with yes. Thank you. But I need to work on my memorization of the Brian Linkey rules. I know that. Don't argue with yes, but at the same time, when that yes comes, you are not done. What are the things that you do and think through? Start with Danny, to make sure these next steps, and you set expectations to make sure that this is a good experience, because what you do now may help you with your next sale.
Absolutely. No. And really that's it's such a good topic to bring up. And it's on several different sectors that we're going to see. I thought of Harvey Specter. That's why I said that. If you guys ever seen that show with Harvey Specter,
The Suits.
The Suits. Thank you. I'm drawing a blank on the name right now.
It's with the princess.
Like
the princess
closer,
is in the movie.
Right? So of course, you closing the close got me thinking of Harvey Specter. This can be in several different areas. Like on our side, we're bringing on partners. I say recruiting, but we're really, they're hiring us as much as we're hiring them. And, we're bringing them on to work together. And whenever we get a new partner coming on board, our work is not done, right? I mean, that's literally just the beginning. And it's about that experience that they have coming on, getting familiar with our systems, our processes, how we're holding their hand, how we're guiding them and supporting them to really start submitting business. Same thing for our partners that are working with merchants. I've got probably 100 merchants in my portfolio that I've signed up over the years. And yeah, just because, it's a friend or a family member or a referral or something like that, you might think it's a little bit easier than normal. You get them to say yes. Maybe it's something simple. You get a terminal and you say, hey, just plug it in. You're ready to go. And you kind of take that relationship for granted a little bit. Be aware, like each sale is something that it's not over when they sign on the application, right? And it's taking that extra step. And Nate, you brought up something there, like what made me think at least of, that's not my job, right? Or that's not what I do. Because there's a lot of folks that do that in their jobs. And I think, this is what separates salespeople from everybody else, is they're going to do anything and everything to make sure that customer has that type of experience. And that is part of the close, right? Just because they've signed on the application, you've got it submitted, you've got the account approved, you haven't closed them until they're a satisfied customer, and that's ongoing.
Love that. All right, Brian Linke, tell me, I know you have some experience with
Best closer
this.
in PayProTec right here, by the way.
Well,
So tell me about this.
Well, no. I think this is a great question or topic to talk about, because I think it relates to, Danny's talking agent wise and what the agents, but the thing is, if you look at our activation rate and our non-activation rate, right? I mean, so everyone, all our agents are paid on activation, right? I mean not the bonus, but if your merchant is not processing anything, okay, you're not making a residual, right? So when you go back to getting them to sign on the line, which is dotted, right? I mean, that's the sales line, getting them to, okay, so that's a great thing. But in this business, especially, I'm talking to the agents out there, if we're not following up, if we're not making sure that the merchant is getting the equipment, if we're not making sure that the equipment is installed properly, if we're not making sure that they're actually activated and processing, then we're not doing our job. I mean, so yeah, the selling took place 2 weeks ago, but the work continues, over time, because again, we're not paying a residual if they're not processing, right? And we're not paying a bonus or a true-up bonus if they're not processing. So I think, and again, and our agents out there that are watching this, I'm probably not talking to most of you just because it's gotten a lot better than it used to be, because we used to have some agents, a lot of them actually, that thought that the only thing that they had to do was go get them to sign on the line, which was dotted. Okay. And again, that's a tough thing to do. There's no doubt about it. However, this job entails more than that. If you want to continue to build your portfolio to where your residual is getting to a higher number, it's just what it is. And and I've talked to a lot of agents who, well, yeah, but you know what? If I'm doing that, then I'm not selling. Well, that is selling. That your job is not over just because you got them to sign a piece of paper, right? So yeah, it just continues. It's an evolving thing, and I think it's extremely important, especially in this business, to where like it's not over until it's over.
And that's one of the things I think for me is I think the sale is never done. And the difference between good salespeople and great salespeople is they realize that, because there's always something you could be selling to that person, and that person is always the testimonial to every other person that's out there. And so you want to be great closers like Danny and Brian, and you have to realize that the close doesn't, you can celebrate the yes a little bit depending on how you feel. Watch some of the questions we did last Friday with Brian Linke. I think that's great advice, but at the end of the day, don't get high on your supply. Get going and get moving, and realize as soon as that yes goes in, you're not done yet. That's not the end goal. The end goal is such a happy customer that it starts you on the process with another customer. And that changes your perspective. Instead of making your goal, yes, I just want to get that yes to the application, which is certainly part of the process, but it is only part of the process. And you've got to think the whole way through. Danny, any further advice as we get finishing up this morning?
No, I think Brian hit the nail on the head, and you did as well. I really see closing. I mean, even merchants in our current portfolio, we should still be closing, right? And that's a part of the service and support that we provide on the back end. That same fire, that same approach that we took to try to get that business and acquire that business, we should maintain as we try to keep that business. So. No, I love that those thoughts and what Brian was saying. It makes a good point.
All right, everybody. It is time to close up our day. Get a little music here. It's been a great Tuesday. We've had a lot of really good content. As Vicky Helms says, Mama Danny Shard. She says family members can be difficult. As Jason Horn said earlier, well, he wants to have a MJ documentary on the Wizard years, which there is a 30 for 30, I think it is, or ESPN that is on those years. But I would love to see even deeper, and one that has more of MJ's. I just don't know if they have that background footage that they had there. But this has just been a great day. So let's let Danny, Brian, give us a couple closing comments as we finish up.
Nothing like starting the day off with Nate saying, what does he call me? Or from the land of elk. And hearing, the story of you getting nearly attacked and mauled by a baby deer on your walk was probably just a great way for all of our listeners to start the day. So
it became attacked and mauled and baby deer. The story is getting a little different here. I just don't know. All right. Brian Linke, what say you, sir?
I like the plug we gave for one of our agents, Charlie DeWitt, with Jim Dandy's Pub and Grill. I think Charlie's doing some great things up there as far as providing food for some of the frontline workers and coming up with the drive-in movie idea. And again, it's just one of our partners going outside the box and figuring it out. So kudos to Charlie DeWitt.
Awesome. All right, everybody. As we finish up here, I am Nate Manahan. It's been a pleasure to have Danny Shard and Brian Linke. We have so much more to come later this week, 10 a.m. every weekday. And I want to say celebration to all teachers out there. Indiana just did the right thing. They didn't have just one Teacher of the Year, but all Teachers of the Year. I just saw the headline pop on my phone. Thanks for watching our High Five. High five, everybody. The High Five.